Welcome back to the Game Room, where we have been upgrading our emulation arcade machine. Now at the moment I've got Time Crisis running here, and I love Time Crisis. But there is something that you will know Time Crisis needs in order to feel like the original, and that is a pedal. When you push the pedal in Time Crisis, you jump out of cover. It makes the arcade machine feel the way it does. If you don't have that pedal in place, then it just really doesn't feel like the original. So today, we are going to hook this up. Now I'm going to show you how to do this cheap. So if you have a build like mine that is running an emulated version of one of these Time Crisis games, then a pedal like this will make all the difference. I'm going to cut it down for you. You do not need any big type of soldering skills or anything, just your regular. And even if you don't have any soldering skills, I'll show you how to do it anyway, so it's going to be easy. You can pick up a soldering iron, do this super cheap, super easy. As I said, without that pedal, this just is not the same. You could program the game so that when you push one of these buttons on the guns, it comes out of cover, which is still fun, just not as fun. So let's do it the best way that we can with something that feels like the real thing. Let's start with talking about the foot pedal itself. If you type in foot pedal into something like eBay, you will find one of these foot pedals for fairly cheap if you sort by lowest price to highest price. So just have a quick look through there until you find one that looks similar. I'll show an example or a couple of examples on the screen as well, so that you'll really get a feel for what these look like. You are looking for one that has a micro switch in it, and that's what this little bit of the sticker really entails. It has the 3 connections. Now we're only going to be using 2 of those, and I'll tell you why later on. But it has a COM, which is your common. It has an NO, which is a normally open, and an NC, which is normally closed. You do not need to know what they kind of represent at this point in time, and it is easy to figure out later on. Don't worry about any of the amps or the volts or anything like that. We're not going to be sending any power, significant power through this. Nothing that will be able to even get you zapped. So it is completely safe in that manner. The way that we're doing this is through a keyboard encoder, something like your IPAC, which you'll have already if you've got an arcade machine, but I'll show you that as well. So this is the main part that we are looking for. This is your biggest purchase, which this one you can find for less than 20 Australian. So I'm guessing if you're overseas, you'll probably even find it cheaper than I can get it. But apart from your soldering iron, which, as I said, you don't need soldering experience. I'll show you how to do that as well. But apart from that, this is your biggest purchase. The rest is just spare parts, and yeah, I'll show you that as we go as well. Okay, excuse the camera angle there, just finding this is the easiest way to do it, so I've got hands free. But essentially on the side, we have our pedal, we have a bit of wire coming out. Now that is not essential. If you find one without it, all good. We have the screw, which is the only thing that's holding this together, apart from this metal bar which the screw is holding in place. So I'm going to take the screw out. Simple as that. And then what I'm going to do is squeeze the pedal in, and I'm going to push this bar out. So you might need your screwdriver to the side. And then once you've got a bit of leverage there, you can get it with your hand and you can pull, pull, pull. And there we go. Now when I let this go, it's going to come apart. We have our spring. That is going to cause the resistance on our pedal, but this is the main part. So when the pedal is coming down, it is actually touching this little micro switch inside. The micro switch has 3 cords. Mine has 3 cords linked up at the moment. We only need 2. So if I was connecting this to some type of power, then it would definitely need that. I'm not. So the stuff that I'm showing you, it's not going to hold any significant power, not enough to even zap you or anything like that. So no dramas there. We're going to use 2 of those, not the 3, and we'll take this out soon. But I just wanted to show you the inside before we get any further. Now it comes time where we need some cabling. So you can do this kind of job with any type of cabling. I've just got some speakers here that aren't really, they're not in good repair. So we might use one of these. So that's just an audio cable that is nice and thin. I would recommend doing this job with something that is thin cabling over something like that is, say, a power cable. I was actually going to give this a go, but then the wires, they're just too thick. I'm going to have a lot harder time trying to get a signal to go through a big clump of wires than I would something nice and thin like this. So what you do need to think about is the length, thickness and the length. So something thin is good, but if you have it too thin, then you're going to potentially have issues where your inner wires might snap, especially if they're in places like that are getting a lot of wear. So just keep that in mind as well. You do want ones that are going to be a little bit hardy, but you don't want them too thick. So audio wire is great. AV cables, those type of setups are really good. What else? USB cabling would work as well, but you might be getting a bit on the thin side. So if you don't have a pair of wire cutters, if you don't have a pair of pliers, then just use a pair of scissors, but definitely it makes it a little bit easier if you have something a little bit more hardy to chop these apart. So just going to chop that wire there. I'm going to make sure that I have my wire as long as I want. Your length of your wire, you could join a few of these together, especially if you have a few soldering skills behind you, but if you don't, then choose a wire that is going to be long enough for your arcade machine to get it kind of from your keyboard encoder to your pedal where you want it on the floor. So you want a bit of length. So this one's looking pretty good. Okay, now that we've got one end off, I'll show you what we need to do. And we need to do this with both ends, but we need to expose them. So inside here, we will have a bunch of wires. We don't want those wires to come in contact with each other. So if you don't have any wire strippers, then I suggest you just using scissors, but you do need to be rather careful. So what we want to do here is to take off the casing and not nick the wires. I'm thinking I'm going to try mine that size there. Okay, so inside this one, what you can see there at the moment that I've just exposed is some shielding. So all this kind of copper looking wire on the outside, that's all shielding to stop, I think it's to stop any type of unwanted signal from getting to our wires. So I'm just going to bring those apart. But these are the two that we are concerned with at the moment. We just need two wires. Doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't matter, again, really how thick they are. But the thinner is easier to work with. So we're going to chop away all this shielding. We're going to expose these two little wires. There we go, so I've just cut those off. Now I've got my two wires to go. I've just gone inside to get some scissors because this is a little bit tricky to do without. So even with the scissors, it might be tricky not to cut the wire inside. So I'm just going to gently squeeze and score. Before I use my wire strippers. But really this is so thin that you could probably just score it a little bit. There we go. And pull it off with your fingers. No wire strippers required. So there's my white. Again, the color makes no difference. You just need your two wires. There we go. Two wires. Give those a little twirl to keep them out of the way of each other. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side, because the other side, well, dirty from the inside wires, the other side is going to connect to my keyboard encoder. I am actually going to, just for full transparency here, I'm actually going to cut two and then join them together. So then I'll have an extra long wire, because I want some distance. So you very much can join those together. if you have similar wires. So I'm going to do that, but I still need the other side cut. You definitely do not have to do it that way. You can do it with the one wire. Okay, now let's have a look at the foot pedal itself. So we could use the old wiring that's there, but I'm not going to. I'm actually going to replace that wiring with the one that we have kind of made. And I'm going to put it through the same hole. I might even keep that wiring in there because I think this wiring will be too small just to have the hole by itself. You might find that the foot pedal that you get is fine, but I'm just going to jam it through with this one and kind of use that one as a bit of protection for the one that I'm putting in. So if that doesn't make sense, let me show you what I mean. So I'm taking apart the foot pedal. Oh, that doesn't need to be in camera. That's got nothing to do with what we're doing. There we are. So now I can take this out. Okay, here's the wiring that came with the micro switch for the pedal. So I want to take these apart. There's two things that I can do here. I can either desolder them, so as in put my soldering iron on top of one of these until it becomes hot enough that you can take them off. So essentially I'm melting the solder that's on there. I'll show you with this top one. Melting the solder that's on the wire. Or the other way. We can just snip the wires off. So which I'm going to go for because I'm having some trouble getting my soldering iron hot enough that I can actually do what I want it to do. So I'm just going to take whatever it is that I have and I'm going to snip these off. There we go. So it's released. Released and released. Okay, wires apart. Here's my micro switch. I'll try and show you the little markings on it. There we are. Alright, so we've got 3 prongs. We're going to put 2 wires onto this, not the 3. What we want is, we've got our micro switch and we want it so that when we push the button, when the pedal comes down, it makes a connection. So that these 2 wires, essentially, they are not touching and the circuit is not touching. And when we push this button, they touch. So they make a connection, they form a connection. And that's like on. When we release the button, they become off. They're not touching. When we push the button, they are on. Release, off, push, on. So that's what we want this micro switch to do. You'll notice that on micro switches, they have little markings. The that is your common. A common wire, all we're going to do here, and it doesn't matter which one I put on which, as long as I match it up with my keyboard encoder, but we're going to use the common as our ground. That will make sense when we get to the keyboard encoder. So we need 1 wire on here. The other ones, they have NC and NO. One means normally closed and normally open. Now a closed connection is, as we've seen, when they are touching, that's your closed connection. And when they're normally open, they're apart. That's what we want. We want them to normally be apart, and then when we push the button down, they close. I'm going 1 wire on common, 1 wire on normally open. That's it, and I'm leaving the other one blank. Now, here's where your soldering skills come in. If you are struggling with a bit of soldering skills because you haven't done it before, it is not hard. You've only got 2 connections to make here. You could wrap the wire around and then try and tape it or glue it or that type of thing, but you're going to possibly run into some issues if you get any pulling, or if your glue goes between the wire and the connection. So ideally you want to solder these together. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to use our red as the one that goes on normally open. we're going to use our white as the common or the ground wire. It doesn't matter with the colors, you can make it any color you want. That's just how I'm going to do it. So what I'm going to do is expose a bit of the wire for the one that I want on the COM or the common connection. I'm then going to, they've got handy little holes in them, and every micro switch has this. I've never seen one without. So we're going to feed the wire through that hole, and we're just going to, you can either wrap it onto itself, or you can just wrap it a little bit onto the actual connection there, just like that. So we've looped it around and it's kind of stuck there. Now we're going to put the soldering iron against that, and when it gets hot enough, we're going to put the solder on so that it can seep onto the wire and onto the connection, and then when it dries it, or when it hardens, when it cools off, they're stuck together. So that's what I'm doing. So in the camera you'll see I'm just pushing the soldering iron against those connections. With my other hand, I don't even have anything to hold these. Just trying to make the connection as hot as possible. There we go. Focus. And I'm letting that solder go onto the connections in the wire. You're better to use too much than too little. I'm just going to hold mine there so I make sure that it is actually getting to the connection, because the connection is harder to heat up than the wire is. And then there we go. I'm letting that cool off. And I'm just having a look at that. And that is good. That's as simple, or that's as difficult as it needs to be. Don't let the soldering portion of this put you off doing this job. Same thing with the next one. Exposing a bit of the wire. Twirling around, I'm putting it through the NO, or the normally open connection. It's going to bring it back on itself. I'm going to heat that up and stick it together just like I did the last. Okay, there's our connection. So, as I said, nothing fancy. We've got our one connection to our common, which is going to be our ground, one to NO, which is our normally open. When we push this button, that's going to close the connection. Let it go, open, push, close. Right, I almost made a real mess of this. I should have fed this wire through before I did the soldering. But because we haven't done the other side, we're safe. So if you started with the keyboard encoder side or the computer side of things, then make sure you feed your wire through before you start soldering. Right, now we are going to put this connection back just how it was before we took it apart. What did that have? So we've got the holder in place. I'm still thinking about whether to jam that full. We'll see how the little connector piece. I might put that in first. So this one is just a bracket to hold the wire. You want to give the wire kind of a little bit of slack if you can, because what you don't want it to do is to pull your connection out at any point when anybody's using your pedal. See that? See my wires loose? That's no good. No good at all. I've got the casing that I had before, so I might jam a little bit of that in. See if we can't get some purchase. Alright, where are we? There's the bracket. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Very happy with that. The thing I don't want is for this wire to be pulled and the whole lot then come undone and you have to start the whole process again. So that's what that little bracket is going to do, and I just clogged it full of offcuts off-cut wire casings that we've been using. But I mean, you could put anything in there. You could even glue your wire in if you wanted to. It just might cause issues if you ever have to repair it. Okay, let's see how this goes back together. Everything just needs to go back the way it was. So everything is happening in reverse now. Putting the spring back in. Putting our pole back in when this is all pushed together. And then on the other side, screwing our pole into place. Okay, that is it. You are most of the way there. We've got our soldered connection into our pedal. We've put our pedal back together. And now what we have to do is connect that to our arcade. Okay, so as I spoke about earlier, we need to now attach this to our keyboard encoder. Every arcade that is running off a computer rather than the original hardware will have a keyboard encoder somewhere. Mine is locked away here. So I'll just undo those. Lift up my keyboard. And here's mine here. Yeah, so this is an IPAC 4. And essentially what it is doing is it is just putting every key that I have, every button, it is turning that into a keyboard press through this device here. This device then runs out here with a USB cable and then gets plugged into one of your USBs for your computer to pretend it's a keyboard. So essentially it's like a second keyboard because I have a keyboard already in here. What we need to do though is make sure that our pedal is going into the correct spots. So one of our wires, which is whatever wire you chose to be the that common wire, or in this case, in my build, if you look back at the video, it is the white wire. My white wire needs to be grounded, so it needs to be attached to this part of my keyboard encoder. Doesn't matter if you have an Ultimark IPAC or if you have a different type of encoder. You still just need one to go to the ground, that is the COM connection, and one to go to a spare button. Now these are all buttons here, like as in I've got my start button, my coin buttons, whatever they are, player 3 button right, player 3 button left. In my encoder I've got some spares, like I've got player 3 button, so 3 switch 5, just keyboard, just the third player button 5 I'm not using. So any of those ones that aren't being used, I can put my red wire, or that is my normally open wire, from the pedal into one of them. So one wire goes to the ground, the other wire has to go to one of these unused buttons. If that's not making much sense, let me just do it and then I'll show you how I did it, and then I'm sure it will make sense after that. I have the first player switch 7 free, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my normally open wire, which was the red wire, into that hole. I'm going to have to undo this ground a little bit and stick my white wire into that. So I'm just going to use the screwdriver, screw it apart, and then put them in. Just set up the camera here so you can see what's going on, but this is not a tricky part of the build. Okay, the same thing as I'm doing before, I'm twisting those wires so that they form a really easy kind of rope of wire that I can stick into the correct spots. I'm going to have to make these shorter because you don't want all that exposed wire to be hanging out. But the way to make it shorter and stronger is actually to fold it in half. So if your keyboard encoder allows, fold your wire in half like that, because it's going to give your screw more purchase to keep the wire in the switch. I've just done it with the red as well. Okay, switch 7, undo. I'm sorry if I block you out, it's just that I actually should unplug this. Okay, the wire's in. I'm just compressing that wire with the screw. You do want those pretty tightly compressed. And then this one, this white one, needs to go with our ground. I hate undoing this because this has been working perfectly for years. And undoing it is going to leave it open for issues that it didn't have, for loosening issues, but it's got to be done. Alright, it's in there with the ground. Okay, I'm going to plug the USB cord back in. Yep, lights on. Alright, I'm back in MAME. I've got my foot pedal, I've got my keyboard. I've got Time Crisis running. I'm going to hit the tab button. I'm going to go to Input Settings, Input Assignments for this system. That means for this game. So it's just this game that I'm changing. The gun trigger is set. The foot pedal is the one that I'm going to push Enter on, and then I'm going to push down my pedal. There we are. So now whatever button you've assigned to your pedal, because I pushed that down when I hit Enter, is going to show up there. So just that again, I'm going to hit Delete. Foot pedal, nothing. I'm going to hit Enter on the keyboard. Now it's opened up. Push my foot pedal. And that button is now set as my foot pedal. Now I can go to Return to Previous Menu. Return to Previous Menu. Close menu. And let's see how we go. Just going to show you with the pedal. So here we are. I've got the pedal in hand, which of course would normally be on the floor, but perfectly working. Alright, we've done it. Now, if you wanted to set that up with any other games, you just follow the same instructions as I did with Time Crisis. You just go into the game, the individual game, you push that tab button, you go to the game controls for the system that you're working on, which is the game that you're working on. And when you push Enter on the foot pedal, you just click that one in, just like that, and it will set it as your pedal controls. And it's as simple as that. We have done this for less than 20 Australian dollars, and we've improved this arcade machine substantially. So it is definitely worth doing. As I said, if you don't have those soldering skills, not a problem. Give it a go, because you're not working with electricity in any way. You're not going to get zapped. This is a really simple build for those people who are not confident in soldering. You've only got those 2 points to solder. Originally I thought 4, but if you're using a keyboard encoder like me, well, I screwed those ones down. So it's 2 points of soldering. If you very much are against soldering and did not, under any circumstances, want to do that, then you could wrap those, just make the wires longer, wrap them around, and hope for the best. Maybe some araldite or something to glue them onto the connection, but it is not a must. We have done it very cheap, very successfully. And now I'm back to playing my games, because that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for joining us on another the Gameroom video. I've got a pedal video that I've linked up with the PlayStation as well if you wanted to check that out. Thanks. See you later.